In this lesson, we're going to go back just temporarily to our melodic phrases and look at how we can add on some new dynamic runs onto them. Now, as pointed out earlier, it is quite exciting to add some fast runs, and we looked at a few that went from the high portion of the scale down to the low. A lot of these dynamic phrases we looked at were confined to the first, second and third string, like the 3-note pattern, the 4-note, the 5 and the 6-note pattern. We also looked at a specific one which allowed us to drop down from the high notes to the low notes very gradually. Now, we're going to take a look at some runs just using our first and third finger that can come out of some of our mid-range melodic phrases. So if I take, for example, our 3-note original pattern that we began the lessons with, or one of these, there's our 3 notes, there's our resolution to our chord note. A runoff would be something like this. You hear the phrase, and then you can suddenly do a little flourish of notes. Now, probably the best way to do this is to actually learn what I call the dynamic runoff, because it runs off down to the bottom of the scale, first, and then we will tie it in to a few melodic phrases. We'll start off with the third string, and we will play that note on the 5th fret and do a hammer-on to the 7th fret 3rd string and a pull-off. Now, from there we'll go to the 4th string, 7th fret, and then back to the 3rd string. Once again. And of course, to make it truly dynamic, which will generate energy, we'll play it faster. So just taking that without continuing all the way down the neck, we could do a melodic phrase. I did a bend, then a 2-note pattern. There's my melodic phrase. And my last note can be the beginning of my short runoff. Again. Now let's continue with our dynamic phrase across the neck. Once again, the notes we had, and then we'll pull off from the 4th string 7th fret to the 5th fret. So we have... One thing to watch out for here is make sure your fingertip, that is your first fingertip, at the same moment that you hit the 4th string, that it hops across in position to the 5th fret on the 4th string. So it's right behind the 3rd finger and ready for the pull-off to take effect. So we have... We'll continue along, 5th string 7th fret, and once back to the 4th string 5th fret. Again. Now, instead of doubling up the pattern with another hammer-on like that, might sound a little predictable. We'll go and then back to this note here. So from here, the hammer-on, we go back to the 4th string, then back to the 5th string, and at this juncture we have 2 areas we can go to. We can either slide back to the 5th fret this way, or we can simply go and pull off and continue along this way. Or we can go slide back and then maybe a little 2-note pattern. I would have to say most of these little phrases do involve a hammer-on and pull-off. Of course, we can use this note as an option. So let's try this very slowly now from the 3rd string. timing with these phrases really isn't that important. Of course, you have to feel out the groove of the backing music that you're jamming to, but the main thing is to get a certain amount of fluidity without actually sort of stopping. And from here, we can do the same type of run coming back this way. We could throw in this note for good luck, good measure. Now what I'm doing is I'm hammering, 3rd fret, hammer on and pull off, back and forth between the 6th and 5th string. Notice I lift my fingertips off. I don't want that blurring of notes that we want to avoid. Hammer if you want for effect. Slide. Maybe back and forth here. And we're back to the root note on the 4th string. Now, I'm not sure if I can play these identically the same, but we'll try. So, once again, we'll take a look at some melodic phrases. Just a very simple one there. 2-note pattern. It falls back onto this chord note. Now we'll try it with the full runoff. And it's good to push yourself a little bit, like try extending how far you can go. For example, if you get to there, try and make an effort to come back. I threw in a few extra notes here. I think the overall image one gets of this type of dynamic phrase is really these two fingers going back and forth, almost shuffling with little 2-note patterns between the strings. That's between, say, the 4th and 3rd string. And these little hammer-ons. Or just to point out we can go that way. So that's the overall impression, is these two fingers really, no little finger involved. Lots of fast, ripply little runs which add quite a lot of dynamic coloration to your playing. Now, we're going to take another look at a few of these phrases. I think conceptually it's important to understand that where the melodic phrase leaves off, the dynamic phrase begins, but there has to be a smoothness. For example, if I do the 3-note pattern, I resolve it to a bend. I may not just want to go, because there's rather a dislocation in the phrasing that takes place. So taking that as an example of a melodic phrase, we may want to go to, say, a 2-note pattern, and then maybe back again, and gradually speed into this dynamic phrase. So I'll just demonstrate this. We'll go. It's almost as if I'm falling down the scale gradually. There's a fine line between where the melodics end off and the dynamics begin. Now, coming back from here, we'll take a look at how we can get right up to here. So we would start from, say, 3rd finger there, using our pattern where we hammer on and pull off and go back and forth, slide. We may want to do that flattening out effect. And then into our dynamic patterns here on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd string. Again, that's open for you to decide whether you do a 3, a 4, a 5 or a 6. And then we can round off with a bend. So we may typically take a melodic phrase in the mid-range on the 4th, 3rd on the 4th and 3rd string, and then tumble down the scale all the way back up with barely a break into these dynamic phrases and wind up with a bend. So we'll listen to something like this. I'd like to demonstrate for you now these melodic phrases and dynamic runoffs with a backing track.